Hi everyone, it's Karen and we're back with part 2 of our paper doll. And so I decided I wanted to do some embellishment on the front of her dress, and I chose this beautiful bridal trim that is also from Angel Dream Crafts Kim, and I wanted to start by doing a waist on the dress. I wanted a fancier waistband of some kind, something to define that waist, as it was two different kinds of lace there and nothing that was really tying it all together. So I chose this pretty V shape from the lace with the lovely little scrolls on it. And I placed that in there at the waist. It was sort of my vision when I saw it in the lace. And I liked it. And I, of course, as you do, flipped it this way and then no, definitely not that way. And I added it in at the waistline and glued that into place. So you just have to look at your laces and look for the shape that you're looking at for. You can also use a ribbon at the waist. You could use little flowers all the way at the waist. There's lots of things that you can use. But this sort of, when I saw it in the lace, and I'm going to use the rest of this lace in the bottom of the dress, so it's going to be tied in more. And I liked the look of it, so that's what I decided to go for there at the waistline. Now, I got carried away and started to cut out these little flowers and leaves out of that lace, the same one that was used for the waistband. I wasn't planning on embellishing right now, but as it goes, sometimes you just do. So I cut out the flowers, and here I've got an extra set of leaves on it, and I only wanted the flower and one set of leaves, so I'm just cutting those off. And I proceeded to do that to make a few of them to go down the front of the dress. So I just laid it, I wanted them to go along the edge of that eyelash trim, where it joins with the flat lace that I used in that little space between the eyelash trim and the peacock trim. So I just fussy cut each one out as I did that very first one, and then I just placed them down the front of the dress. And eventually I glue them in place so they do become permanent. I always start with placement first, look at it for a while and then decide. And then here I'm showing how I'm adding the peacock trim. I had it down the front, and now I'm adding it to this around the side towards the back. And I just chose the same pattern of the 6 peacocks, the 1 and then 2 at the bottom, and added those in. And I pinned and clipped it in place to start out with. And that was just for placement. It was really important to me to get the placement right. And then I actually end up using a combination of hot glue and stitches to stitch the eyes together down the side of the dress. And you'll see that later. I do show, I don't show me doing it, because doing like slow stitching on camera is, I think, like watching paint dry. So I went ahead and just did that, and off the, not in front of the camera, and then I'll show it to you later. Some people would use all glue and just glue it. I just prefer to do a few stitches there, where you can see the pins where I've pinned the eyes together right on the side of the seam. That is where I put the stitches in. Now that I have that all lined up for the side seam, now I'm gluing the eyes down exactly where I want them to lay on the front of the dress. And I'm only gluing down the edges of the 2 large eyes that meet that flat lace. So again, yeah, I'm off camera at the moment, but I do glue in again and I move it up. So the first eye you saw me glue, now I'm showing you again. I'm gluing along the edge of that large eye and then laying it against that flat lace. And although I don't show it on the camera, I always go back and check to make sure it has not glued to the tulle underneath, because I want that free. So now I'm just showing you how the peacock trim is lying, how I pinned it on the side, and those where I will put the stitches is right where those pins are, and a little bit of glue at the waist where the clip is, and that will hold it all in place. And that's it. And that is completing the front part of that dress and starting around to the back. And I'm very happy with how it looks. I really think the peacock trim looks really pretty down the back of that dress, and it all come together, and the little pieces that I cut out and put on the front I like as well. So I think this is another day, but I'm adding it on here. Yes, it is, because I can see my shirt I'm wearing a different shirt. And you can see that I have her there, and I'm showing you what I have done with the little flowers, and I've started the other side of the dress where it's going to come around, and so that you can start seeing more of this dress coming together. Here I'm just showing how I stitched the eyes together in the side seam of the dress. So just a few stitches just between the eyes there, so that formed the side of the dress. And it's not fluffed out right now, so I do go under and I show you how it's not attached to the tulle underneath. And then I go ahead and really fluff up that tulle, which you then see that dress fluff right out. It makes quite a big difference because after you're working on it, of course, it gets pushed down a bit, and then you fluff it back out and you see how nicely that dress lies. And I think it came together really nice on the side with the stitches rather than using glue there. And then I added a couple of little extra flowers in that sort of match the ones that are running down the front of the dress. I didn't have any more to cut out from that lace that matched the ones that are right down the center of the dress, so I used another trim, and this was also from Angel Dream Crafts. I cut out the little tiny flowers, and then I still had some pieces left of that trim, the scrolly part, and it from the one with the sequins, and so the scrolly part had little bits of those sequins on them. So what I did was I cut those sequins off, which is a tedious little job, but you know what? Needs must sometimes. And so I cut those sequins off, and then I'm just showing you the trim, and that was where the sequins were attached. And I cut them off, as I said, and I added them with a tiny little 11/0 clear seed bead. I added them onto those flower trim that I showed you, just with a bead needle and some thread, just to create a couple more flowers. I think in the end I may have put a third one on. I can't really remember, but right now there's two added, just to bring the sparkle and those little flowers over to that side of the dress and on a little bit onto the peacock trim. And then I created, I'm showing you where I added sequins and little pearls onto the sleeves of her dress. I had mentioned before when I put the petals on that I was going to add some more embellishment on her sleeves. And now I'm showing you how I used another piece of that trim, the bridal trim, to make a flower for her waistline. So I cut out this piece, this little flower from the trim, and then I cut the center out of it. And by doing that, I'm able to create a 3D flower, which is what I wanted to put at her waist. I didn't want to put something flat on top of the peacock eye that's there, and I wanted it to, reach up a bit onto the bodice, and I wanted it to stick out a bit. So I cut the center out, and then I cut the trim, a spot in the trim, and then I just kind of roll it onto itself to create the flower effect. And I show you how I do that. So I'm deciding which two petals I want to cut between, and then I just sort of roll it. And I don't think I actually glued this one because I didn't want another 3D one for the dress, or I didn't think I did, so I didn't want to spoil that because I might need it for something else. So you just roll it in like that, and then I add a pearl in the center after. The other reason I wanted a 3D flower at her waist is I wanted you to give the illusion, because her arm is lying there, I wanted the flower to stick up so that it would look like the arm was behind the flower, with the petals sticking up. And I also added a couple of leaves from the trim as well onto the edge of that flower. And I think I'm going to show that in a minute here. I don't know why I'm fussing with that and showing you that for such a long time. But anyway, there you go. So there it is. And then I added the couple of little leaves on. And so it does have a dimensional effect to it. And I placed that right there at her waist. And her arm would be behind the flower there. And it just kind of finishes that edge off for me and adds something pretty to the dress, and it brings that sparkle of the sequins that are also in the flowers down her dress. It brings it up to the waistline. And then I do add I add a full round pearl. I did try a flat back pearl first, but I didn't like how it looked, so I actually dug in my stuff and I found I think it was probably like a little 6/0 or probably a 6/0 or an 8/0 little pearly bead, and I add that into the center of that flower because again I like the dimensional appearance of it, so I kept with that look for the whole thing. And so that finished off the waist for me. And now, of course, you look at that and you think, well, you half covered up the waistband that you put on, Karen. But, it's all there in the layers because I didn't use very much glue to glue that flower down. So you can still see the edge of the waistband, and that's the way I like it. Now I have to apologize because I can hear myself talking and murmuring in the background sometimes behind the voiceover. And I had the volume turned off on my iPad, but I don't know why it's picking up that. I guess it wasn't turned off or it turned itself back on. And that wasn't my intent because I had a terrible cold and really couldn't speak that well. And I still actually have a cold, but my voice is a lot better. So I'm sorry that you can hear that in the background, and I'm not smart enough to know how to get rid of that before I do the voiceover. So hopefully it's not too bothersome. Maybe I notice it more than you, I don't know. So here I'm showing you the back of the dress, and because I was yapping away, I missed part of it. But I added the beautiful long dangle trim on the side, and then I added this pretty, it's a crocheted piece that was like a placemat, and I cut out those pieces from it, and again sort of fan shapes down the back, but then one larger flower piece at the top there, and it's sort of a rosy pink color, and again going along with the sort of the roses, the creams, the whites, and the pinks that I chose for this paper doll. And I added them like a cascade down the back. Really glued them together exactly like I did the fan shapes on the front of the dress. So minimal glue just down the centers, so to connect them, and then showing you the eyes there, that I added down. And then I decided to put that overlay of rose fabric, crocheted fabric, down the center and over top the eyes on the one side, and then a kind of a combination on the other side. The other side has those beautiful flowers at the very top of that dangle trim, and I decided that I wanted them to be partially seen and sort of look like they kind of sweep from the side of the dress where they join to the front and then kind of sweep up to the back. So that's the look I went for. It was originally all pinned and looked at for probably a couple of hours before I start doing any final gluing. And of course there is that one knotted layer of tulle underneath there as well. I just did one on the back rather than doing the two. The dress just seemed too full with two more at the back. So now I'm gluing that little flower in place, and I am gluing that over top that rosy colored crochet fabric that's down the middle. And I will then continue to glue that, I think, all the way down. So you will see that all come together. And then I add a piece in the center. So you can see how the flowers continue to swoop up the side. So if you look down more to where my wrist is, you'll see them come from the side, and then there's one there, and then the next one, and then the one I'm just adding now. And I just moved that. I had to lift that petal a little bit and reapply it because I wanted that to lay sort of in there a little bit and still keep that somewhat centered down the back of her dress, the one that I just added. I just felt that it tied that sort of dangle trim in better to have that one more piece overlay over top the rose color fabric on the back of her dress, as opposed to just having it end there off to the side. So that's why I added that extra piece in over top of the rose colored crochet lace. And yeah, I think there was some pins I took out there, and then I'm just gluing the edges of the flowers and then adding them into place. Again, using minimal glue is so important, because otherwise everything, especially along the sides of the dress, because otherwise it's so stiff and it looks so unnatural, and it just doesn't look nice. So really be careful with how much glue you use. I love my hot glue. I am not a Fabrifix, Fabri-Tac person, don't even own any. I just am very careful with the amount I use, and I'm always happy with the result. And I find that my projects, the lace is very flexible and soft, and it's never stiff or hard. And so, there you again deciding, which piece goes over top of which. And I liked that laid there and that the rosy colored lace came over the top. And so there I've added a little bit of glue to the edge of the rosy lace to just apply it in place. You sort of have to make these pieces meld together. They can't all be hanging loose unless you want to go for that sort of raggy look in the dress, which is another look onto itself and is perfectly fine if that's what you like. In this particular case, I wanted to do a more structured dress, so I did want the pieces to appear that they were stitched together. So either hand stitching or using your hot glue in a way that allows the pieces to come together. And again, not always showing you, but I always am checking to make sure that it is not gluing to the tulle underneath. I use such a small amount of glue that I know for the most part it isn't going to seep underneath, and that's why I don't always check. But I do check, and I do make sure that tulle stays separate from the lace on the top. And there I've added a little bit of glue. I could have done some stitches there like I did on the other side with the eyes of the peacock, but I just decided that there's such a heavy weave on that dangle that I just added glue. And here you can see me going in and making sure, double checking to make sure that none of my pieces, that the glue has seeped through and has attached that overlay of lace on the tulle underneath. Because again, as I keep harping on it, it really is important to your look. It makes a huge difference. I have made dresses before. As I said in one of my other videos, the other paper doll video, I used to make dresses for my Barbies, and I used to make dresses for paper dolls when I was a young girl. And so I know from past experience how to make something look a certain way and not have that gluey effect. So here I'm just adding a little bit of glue to the flowers that peek from that dangle trim that come around to the front. And I did decide to use, to put the flowers over the eyelash trim and let them show a bit on the side of the dress on that side. And again, these are just decisions you make. You put one lace over the other. Which one do you like the best? How do you like the way it lies? And so that's me fussing and continuing to attach the lace to the side of the dress. And it's always a good idea to pick up the paper doll and shake it a bit, especially when you're doing that side seam, which is what I'm doing here, so that you get that lace attached in the right position. Because when the dress is lying down, it hangs differently. So I just held it up, held in place, and then I added a little bit of glue there to attach that piece of dangle trim coming right down the side of the dress there. Now I'm just giving you a look of how it looks, taking a look at it, making sure it all looks good, seeing the attachment of everything, and just showing you the side of the dress there. And I put my hand underneath and push it down so you can actually see how that all came together and how the flowers swoop around the side and how pretty they look sweeping up to the back there. That piece I haven't fully attached it yet, but I will get to that. Just showing you the rosy crochet trim and then how it molds and blends, I guess is the best word, into the peacock trim. And again, the side of the peacock trim, how it's all finished. And the last look at the front. and now I'm going to get busy and finish off this piece on the back. I just attach the flower again, and yeah, I use sometimes the tip of my glue gun, so I'm not actually putting glue on top of the flower there, I'm actually just pressing it down with the tip. And making sure that that's lying, a couple of little spots that are moving around I noticed, and that's something you notice too when you're holding it up and moving it around, then you'll see if something moves out of place. And then just deciding exactly how I want that dangle to lie and how much glue I want to apply. I do decide that I want it to be quite stable coming down the back of the dress, not flapping around, so I add a little bit of glue on the final dangle piece that comes down the center and attach that to the rosy colored crocheted lace. And again, out of screen, but caught myself and moved it up. And again, just a little bit on those little wing parts that stick out on the sides so they're not flapping around. You wouldn't see that type of thing on a dress just flapping loose around. I think it would look funny on if it was someone wearing a dress like that. So I always think of that as I'm designing it and putting it all together. What part would I want moving? What part would I want sticking out? What would I want to lie flatter? And again, just fussing a little bit with the flowers there, making sure that each petal of the flower or a leaf that's there is actually, lying flat where I want it. Or if it's sticking up, it's become noticeable to me, and so I wanted to make the adjustment on that. Now I'm going to finish off the back, and I just talk a little bit about how I covered the back of her. So I did, remember I had the cereal box with the writing on it, so I added a piece of white, thin, I guess scrapbooking paper that I had, and then I laid that lace over the top. And I lay it on, and then I trim around it again. So a lot of extra work. My advice would be to start with a white surface for your background, then you just can cover it with lace. Excuse me, and I just use a flat lace. Now I decided I wanted a bow for the back of her dress. I thought about a lot of different things, tried a few different ideas out, but this was what I decided. So I already made the bow. So it's a lovely pink satin ribbon from Angel Dream Crafts, and I just tied it in the middle with a piece of ivory satin that I had on my desk. It didn't matter because I'm going to put a bling in the center, and I knew that, so it didn't matter what was tied off in the center. It's about a 3/4 inch ribbon, I believe. So I just add that right to the back. I do trim off the top of the very top of that piece of rose crocheted lace at the top, just because it would stick above the bow, and I didn't like that. So that was trimmed off flat, hidden behind the bow, so not a big deal. And now I do as you do, I do an audition for a piece of bling for the center of that bow. And of course I'm using bling from Kim's shop, Angel Dream Crafts Kim. She has the most beautiful bling, not gonna lie. I've had other blings in my stash, and I always go to hers first. And very rarely do I not use one of her pieces. So I've got the puffy heart with the rhinestones that I tried, and I think it's a bit big. It's a lovely piece, but just for this bow and the center of this bow. I don't want to hide too much of the bow with the bling center. I want it to complement it, not overpower it. So I'm looking through my stash of her things. I have a pretty little vintage dish that I keep all the bling in from Angel Dream Crafts Kim. So I go through there and I pull out some pieces to finish doing the audition with. So hopefully I have them all set here now. Not sure why I'm setting pieces here, there, and everywhere, but I am. Oh, I know. I set the heart off to the side there because I all of a sudden get an idea as I'm going through my bling for that little pink heart with the rhinestones that I set off to the side. So we'll see that in a little bit. So here we go. We're going to march through the audition again. There's that heart, puffy heart with the rhinestones. I do think that's too big. This is a puffy pearl with rhinestones. And then that's in metal. And then this is her little pearl with rhinestones in acrylic. I thought it was a bit small. And then this is one of her rhinestone bows with the beautiful pearl drop. And I do really love that, but it does have a bail on the back, and I have to cut it off for it to sit there nicely. And I decide I want to save that for something else. And I choose the puffy pearl in the rhinestones. That's the little bit bigger one, the one that's all in metal. The one that was acrylic was just a little bit too small, I felt. So there you go. That is the parade of the blings, and a choice has been made. Thank goodness. Hope that wasn't too painful for you all. But adding these little elements for embellishments brings me the biggest amount of joy in my crafting. So I will take the extra time to audition and ponder and try and decide. Now here I'm using my lighter to heat seal the ends of the ribbon so that they're melted and it stops it from fraying. And I find that very effective a way to keep your ribbons looking nice. And so this is the back of the dress complete, and this will be the end of this video, and we'll come back to do all the embellishing, and you'll want to come back because I have a lot of fun doing what I love the most, and that's embellishing. So I hope you'll come back for part 3. Talk to y'all soon. Bye for now.